Hey, everyone. It's Jim Fuse here with out Tim. Unfortunately, Tim is running around like crazy because he's getting ready for his big in-person event, Perspectives on Cancer. And so, but I'm extremely excited to be joined by an actual local fellow, I guess, I don't know, do we call ourselves Atlanteans? Mickey Mellon of GreenMellen, and we got to know each other before COVID. And so, in fact, he actually got to go to a Braves playoff game with a friend of ours, Trenton Carson, and that's how we initially connected. Because I said, Trenton, hey, I can't make this game. Why don't you take my tickets and have some fun? And he took Mickey, and I think you had a good time. I mean, the Braves might have lost that day, but it was still
it was a good time. Trenton's a good guy to hang out with, so that worked.
Yeah. And so today, folks, we're going to talk about something that I know I've been neglecting, and that is using your website to power your marketing efforts. And Catherine Lang is here already in the chat. And it's funny, right? You talk about a small world, as Catherine knows Mickey from WordCamp, and she's over in Alabama, and she's also been on the show. And there you go. That's right. Another reason you need to come to Atlanta for sure, Catherine, because we need to see those unicorn sprinkles of yours. And so, let's get started. So Mickey, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to into this web business.
Yeah, so I got in sort of by accident. I played around on the web in the 90s like a lot of people, but played more basketball than web and missed out on all the millions people made there. But really, in the early 2000s, I was working in a big church just outside of Atlanta here. It was big, like it had 100 people on staff kind of church. And Allie Green happened to be working there as well. After a few years, about 2009, she left to start her own design company. I left to start my own development company, but we both needed each other's help a lot because she doesn't develop and I don't design. And so for a while, we kind of settle up every month, say, okay, I owe you $200 for that. You owe me $300 for this, and kind of figure it out. And finally said, you know what, let's just throw it all in one pile, see what happens, and just kind of make websites for people. And then we said, well, we probably should hire another designer because we need some more help with design. And I guess we should get an office space. And suddenly here we are 13 years later, we're a team of 8. So not super huge, but a real company in a real office. And yeah, that's kind of how we've gotten to where we are.
Wow, that is a great story, and it is funny how so many times we end up. I like to use the word shift as opposed to pivot to find that spot that works for us. And who knows, right? You guys may continue to evolve your company as it grows, and you see things change. I know I really have shifted much more into remote video production, and then of course with we're talking about the Amazon live stuff as well, and I really enjoyed it. And people need help with video. I think that's continuing to grow, but even though you have video, you still need a website, and I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on today is to kind of talk about that. And so let's get started with our first question, and that would be, why does our business or personal brand need a website?
So I think there's different answers to those two. I think we'll start with personal brand because I think some do and some don't. Looking at our team, Robert Carnes on our team just published his 3rd book. He has his own site. He needs his own brand. Like, that's essential for him to do this. He has actually a couple websites for his personal brand, but others on our team just want to do the work and they don't necessarily need a personal brand or want a personal brand. And that's okay too. Our designer actually came to us. We'd worked with her for years and she has a personal brand and she still does, but she was tired of having to manicure that all the time. Just wanted to do great work. And she does just brilliant design work. And so she came to us. And so she didn't have to deal with finding clients and all that. She can just do the work and not have to necessarily build that personal brand. In her case, she does keep it on the side a bit, but there's that. But for business, I think it is a lot more important because all the things we might talk about, video being a huge one, and social media and blogging and email marketing and Google ads and all the things you might do, ultimately come back to your website. I mean, the idea of Google ads always point to your site. Social media, hopefully you attract people, but they're going to check out your site. People are going to funnel back there at some point. And so you better impress them still and make sure that it validates what they saw. If you have a killer video and they're super impressed and they love you and they go to your site and they get confused and a little nervous, that's not a good thing. And they're probably going to fall off there.
Yeah. And now, do you have a specific, I guess, web? I think you like to use WordPress, right? Is that
we do? Yeah. And we can that could lead to a whole different rabbit trail. That's, again, how I know Catherine. We've been big in the WordPress community for about a decade now. You know, she's big with WordCamp Birmingham, the conference they have there, which is coming back in February next year, finally, after a couple of years off. I've done a lot with WordCamp Atlanta. That's coming back next year at some point. Hopefully, we'll see. But we like WordPress because you can own it. You know, WordPress has the WordPress.com that you can go and set up a site on, and it's on their server. But most people use the WordPress.org software you download and put on a host of your choosing, and it's yours. You can back it up, you can hold it, you can move hosts. Like, no one else controls it other than you. And there's a lot of good behind that for sure. And Catherine, I saw a post in the comments there, she loves the WordPress community. That's another thing too that's been huge, is the WordPress community in general is just so much more open and sharing than most other communities. In our little business park we're in here now, there's 2 other marketing agencies, and they basically refuse to talk to one another. Like, we're all enemies with each other, and that's just not how we do things. Like, we're friends with all the other WordPress agencies in town. We send work to them, they send work to us. Like, it's a beautiful community. But at the end of the day, it's because WordPress can be self-hosted and you can own it and control it. I think is the biggest thing for me that keeps you in just much better shape going forward.
You know, and that's an interesting comment you made, and I really don't understand that mindset, because I think you know, even like sometimes Chris and I with Amazon, we have people get upset that we encourage other people to become Amazon influencers, right? Because, you know, if anything, if, you know, bringing in better people, better content helps everyone. And it's like, if your stuff's not good, then just get better, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there's plenty of work for everyone. I remember too, you probably had the same thing. It's like, people are like, oh, well, don't you want, it's like, look, I don't have enough time to, as an example, do the social media for every company in Atlanta. I
For
wouldn't
sure.
want to, right?
Yep.
So, you know, you find those companies and those people that you can work with. And I think that's more important than, you know, trying to be like the, I don't know, king of the world. I mean, what are your thoughts there?
No, for sure. It's, again, we want people to have the best possible outcome, even if that's not with us. You know, we probably take 2/3 of the leads that come in, and I find them a good home with someone else, and it makes us look good too. I mean, it reflects positively on everyone. We actually, in the last year, sort of took down the pre-qual form on our site. We used to have a pretty long questionnaire to make sure they had enough budget and all that kind of stuff. I just want to talk to folks now. I was kind
Right.
of inspired on that by Seth Godin. I'm sure you're familiar with him and
Yes.
some of his work. But he mentioned years ago when he was trying to find his first publisher, he sent out 4 requests to publishers, and 3 of them said, here's a form to fill out and we'll see if you're any good. And the 4th one said, hey, let's have a conversation, see what's going on. And guess who's now published 20 of his books, you know, since then, is the one that was willing to chat. So I figure at the end of the day, if I waste a half hour talking to someone, but I can give the business to a friend of mine and everyone wins, like, how is that a bad thing? So I'm
Right.
trying to do more of that lately.
And Catherine says relationships, all about relationships, which is how your brand can benefit from a website, because it gives you a place to build relationships.
In many cases, that's true. I think in some, it's not necessarily, because if there's not built to build relationships on a site, but certainly can support the relationships if nothing else. And Catherine is kind of the relationship queen, I think, too. She has relationships all over the place and knows everyone. So that's kind of a big focus of what she
Yes.
has. But I look at like the GreenMellen site. We have, I think, a fantastic website, but there's not really comments and community features on it to build relationships on the site per se. But hopefully it attracts people to find us and follow us other places, and can help facilitate that.
And I guess that's where you probably look at social, as that's kind of where you do your community building for your brand. Do you guys have a specific place that you prefer to have that conversation with, or really doesn't nothing in particular that you know you would say one over the other?
Yeah, nothing in particular, really. Personally, I like LinkedIn, I think, better than any of the others at this point. Facebook, I think, for our business tends to get the most interaction. We do a lot on Instagram, again, because we just have fantastic designers. They can do some neat stuff there. But then we also look at other things like Meetup. We've hosted a monthly Meetup for a decade now. So it's 100, I think it's been 130 some meetings. And that's a place to meet people virtually, sometimes in person, sometimes, and kind of build that community. And again, that's because it's been around the WordPress community, which, especially in our area here, like this area of like North Atlanta, where we are, is probably the most WordPress dense area in the country. I mean, there's
Hmm.
at one point before COVID, there were like 9 different meetups meeting in this area. It was just insane. And it's kind of cooled off. Things have shifted a bit now post COVID, but it's still just a fantastic place. And I'd see a lot of the same people, a lot of the same places, and get to know them real well. And again, know what they're good at, know what they're not good at, and bend their ear if I needed help, or send them a client if I thought it was a good fit. And it just yeah, having that community has been fantastic for us.
And is that a monthly meetup that you guys do?
It is. Yeah. Right now it's monthly. We're probably going to switch to quarterly next year and go back in person. We've been virtual and monthly for the last 3 years, and then in person monthly for the previous 7 or whatever. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Wow. That's a, yeah, I need to check into that. I need to meet some of these folks.
Yeah. And that's why we want to get back in person too, is the virtual one's great and we learn a lot, but when it's over, you kind of hang up and just go home. Whereas
Right.
in person, while you're packing your bags, you talk to more folks. And
Right.
talking back to WordCamps, even my favorite topics from WordCamps over the years, I've seen hundreds of sessions, and all my favorite memories are from in the hallway, from when I got to talk to that person. He gave me that one great tip, and I finally met this person. And the topics are great, but just the relationships are greater.
Right. Right. So let's move on to the next question, and that is, how can we use our website to market our business?
So I think a couple things come into play there. The first that we've been really big on the last couple of years is getting the messaging straight first. Before we get into a website, we really work on messaging. We loosely follow the story brand framework, if you're familiar with that, from Donald Miller. And then Robert, I mentioned our team, just published a book. His book is called The Story Cycle. So we search for The Story Cycle by Robert Carnes. It's a different approach to storytelling, but just figuring out that story, who you are not, who you serve, why you serve them, why people love you, why people maybe not. Just get all that. We spent about a month really digging into all of that stuff first, because that applies to the website and everywhere else. But then on the website, when people get there, they can see, again, kind of following the story brand model. Hey, here's the problem you have. Here's the solution we offer. And here's how great life is later. And here's how to get started. And so people can come to the site and say, that is my problem. These people know my problem and they know how to fix it. It's a great place to be. Specifically for marketing, though, there's a couple angles. One, of course, is like SEO, search engine optimization. Ranking well in Google is the big one. But again, as we said before, a lot of what your website does to market your business is to back up the other things you do. When they see you on Facebook or on LinkedIn, and then they come to your site, does it match kind of the experience they've got? Or, most of our business comes word of mouth. So when someone says, hey, you should use GreenMellen, they're great. They're going to come to our site, and will they still think we're great? Will it match their expectations? Will it not? We have a lot of our clients who are the same way, that the website is not meant to be like outbound marketing per se, but just to validate inbound leads that come in different ways. And so a lot of ways you can do it, but having that messaging straight and having a great website that can validate however the traffic is coming in is kind of where we like to focus.
Well, and I love to, one, Donald Miller, big fan, but also just the whole idea of, we got to remember that we're problem solvers in business, right? And so if the website is maybe helping people understand how you solve their problem, right? It's because it's not about us, right? It's about our, potential clients and how we can help them. And I think that's what, I think sometimes, I don't know, do you find that sometimes people with their websites or even their social presence almost seem like they're more like broadcasters, just like, hey, look at me, look at how great I am, as opposed to, hey, here's how we help others? What are your thoughts on that?
For sure. Yeah. A joke we had online not long ago is, a common joke with designers is clients always want their logo bigger. Make the logo bigger. And my response is, how does that help your client? Because we're not building a site for you. We're building a site for the people you're trying to serve. And so what do these decisions have to do with that? And then a quote I love from Rory Vaden, who wrote Take the Stairs and some other books. He says, you're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were, which basically means like most businesses started because they had a problem. They figured out how to solve it themselves. And now they're trying to sell that solution to other people. Like, talk about that. Talk about the problems you solve and how you can help them get through it. Because, hey, I've been where you are. I can help you get to where I am now. So let's go do it together, because I've had that problem and I've solved it, and I can show you how to. Right.
And I love what the Catherine saying, have fun, make friends, be relentlessly helpful. And she definitely is. I know her and I have been doing some chatting of late about possibly writing a book.
Okay.
I shouldn't say possibly. She's going to make me do it, but
yeah, relentlessly helpful. Is something I try to practice, and something she absolutely nails. She is relentlessly helpful. That's how I know her. Because she's been so helpful the times I've engaged with her in the past. So
yeah, definitely. So I think one of the things too, the next question I'd have for you is, what is the difference between a landing page and a website, or do we need both?
That's a good question. So, technically the difference is a landing page is a page, a website is a collection of pages. Often a website will have some landing pages on it. And really it's all about what the purpose is for. We often see, especially if someone's running Google ads, a landing page can be a good thing because the purpose of a page for a Google ad recipient, I guess, a visitor that comes from a Google ad, is different than what your other pages might be. And so we'll often have the same page on a site twice. We'll have like the the flowery version for Google that they want them to index and get ranked well, and then a very simple version of that we actually hide from Google, just saying, hey, if you came from a Google ad, you just want to get to business, and here's what it is. So having that focused Google ad without the flowery stuff and telling them, because they came from the ad, they know what they want. Let's give them a different version there. And then something we're doing for some of our clients that have brand new companies is just starting with a very robust, I guess you could call it a landing page. It's a single page, but a much more longer, robust kind of storytelling page, just as a place to start. And then in the future months, we can build out other pages and features and stuff. But let's just get something off the ground. So it's a little bit different than a landing page, I guess, in the technical sense, because again, a landing page should have a singular focus to get a conversion based on how people are getting there. But there's advantages both ways.
One of the things I've seen sometimes, and I don't know if, well, I would think you'll know the answer for sure. That's why I have you on here.
We'll see.
Is sometimes people will say, for an example, they want someone to sign up for something and they send them to their website, but it's not like, something that's easily findable. And now you're asking me to click on a bunch of things, and people will like get frustrated and leave. And I think that that's sometimes where, I don't know if that's more in page setup or if it's more like that's where a landing page would be good because it gets them, to the end result. Like, if you want them to have a download, here's the download. You maybe collect their email address so you can then, it's like, hey, go to our website for this, that, and the other. Because I think sometimes that's what I've seen with some websites. They're so busy. It's like if I go to the website, I'm like, where am I supposed to go now?
Yeah, no, you're right on both counts. I think it is about page structure, but also about having proper landing pages. We was talking to this with a client yesterday that has a services section on their site, but it's just a services page with like 8 different things on it. And so again, you say, hey, go check out our service for plumbing. Well, go to our services page and scroll like halfway down, you might see it, versus if you had a page for each service, you can say, hey, here's a link to our plumbing page with the details and how to sign up. And that's really where it gets tricky though, too, is more pages are better in theory, both for SEO and for that kind of purpose to give people exact links. But if you have 57 things in your navigation, then it becomes a hot mess. And so finding the right balance of a tight navigation, easy to navigate, but also having a lot of content that can hit specific problem points and really so you can hand people specific answers is huge. And you'll see this in search too. If you do a search in Google for almost anything, you're not going to find home pages in the search results. It's going to be giving you specific deep pages inside of sites that best answer the question. So the more of those specific pages you have, people on search will find that page directly. You can tell them that page directly. You can share that page directly in social. But yeah, that's very true. I've seen that. Like I had that yesterday trying to sign up with a different gas company for our house. I said, hey, you need to go fix it, then go to our site and do it. I'm like, where you have 1,000 pages on your site? Just send me a link to the page to go update that thing. And that's very true. And that's certainly a big problem.
Right. And Catherine asked, when do you want to hide your landing pages? And I think she's actually saying from Google. Is it? I think she was the next part of that comment.
Yeah, and that's a great question. So we hide them when we have a duplicate page. So if we have like the big page about, I'll go back to plumbing, like a big plumbing page, but then we have a separate landing page for Google ads. We don't want Google to see both of those and not be sure which one to index. We want them to index this one. So we hide that one from Google simply from an SEO perspective. This one's not in the navigation. It's not anywhere. This is one people will find, Google will find, Google will index. But then from a search ad, we want them to go straight to the tiny landing page. So it's really just to avoid any duplicate content issues or user confusion kind of issues. It's not that it's bad to expose them if it's just a single page, but if you have 2 very similar pages, you want to tell Google for sure, this is the one I want you to rank, and this is the one I'm going to use for other stuff. So please don't index it.
And that's probably where I want to hire a professional like you, so I understand how I hide these things, because otherwise I wouldn't know how to do that, Catherine, when you're saying hide something from Google, because I thought they're everywhere.
There you go. Google actually makes it too easy to hide things sometimes. There was a case just this past week with someone running for Secretary of State in Arizona, I think, that was just destroying Google on Twitter, that Google had deplatformed him and it was the worst thing ever. Turns out he had set a setting in WordPress that said, hey, Google, don't index my site. And Google respects that. Google does exactly what they're told with that. And so, yeah, and that's a mistake. I see that mistake a lot. There's a little checkbox buried in WordPress and in Squarespace and others too that says, Google, don't index my site at all. Like, just go away. And people leave that check by mistake, and Google and Bing and DuckDuckGo, they all respect that and don't index it. And
right.
It's one of those, the follow-up question to that I often hear is, well, why would there be such an option in there? And the reason is, if you're building a new site and you have your current one up, you don't want Google to see the new site until it's ready, because then you'll have, again, the same kind of issue. So you check that box on the development site, and then when you go live, you uncheck it. And it's very easy in the chaos of going live to forget that one little checkbox that's just devastating if you do. So,
right. And Catherine has another question. She's like, do you do reviews of existing websites to help determine what should be hidden, refreshed, or combined? And she's asking for a friend.
We go through that when we're building a new site. Generally, we don't do a lot of editing to existing sites, more kind of using that to help build a new one. That's certainly a big piece of it, is figuring out that sitemap, really figuring out the content, the messaging, and how that leads into the sitemap, and making sure it's easy to navigate and find what you need. And there's not a lot of hiding that generally needs to go on a site, unless you have that situation where you've intentionally built two similar pages. I mean, most of our clients, 95% of them, we have Google see as much as they possibly can. We don't hide anything. We want everything in Google. So there's not a lot of that, but combining can be good. But again, even that gets tricky, because if you have your plumbing page and your electrical page, it might be some of the same audience, but there's advantages to keeping them separate, and it becomes a fun, deeper conversation than we can really just lay out an option for here. But
Right.
it's something neat to dig into to try to figure out what makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. And great question, Catherine. Hopefully your friend got the answer they were seeking. Mickey, what tips would you recommend for those that have neglected their website presence? And I know I'm one of those guilty parties. I mean, is it, do I need to like start over, create a new site? I mean, or is it just a matter of really like thinking about, what is it I want to focus on? And does it hurt to like delete content off your site that maybe isn't relevant anymore?
If it's not relevant, it certainly doesn't hurt to delete it. But I think it's really about making sure you're speaking the right message. I would go back to messaging and say, hey, here's how I want to talk about myself. Is the site reflecting that? And can I fix that easily enough, or do I need to tear it down? And there can be different angles to go with there, but really owning it too is a big one. And I saw some comments come in about that, where, I saw one, you should update there's that one. You should update your website. And this, again, usually every 90 days. So that's pretty aggressive to do it every 90 days, but for the right kind of site, that could be helpful. And what is update too? I mean, we add new blog posts to our site weekly and change little things all the time, versus others will revamp the entire site every 4 years or so. So there's different levels of that. In a previous comment, you could maybe share theirs. Websites are your digital real estate. You own it, unlike accounts on social media. That one there, that's a big one, I think, too. If it's time to look at your site again, do you own it? Again, Squarespace and Wix and others are fantastic tools. I don't want to downplay them, but they own you. Like, if they get mad at you, you're in big trouble. We saw that early in COVID, and I don't want to get political, but it was for political reasons, where America's frontline doctors were on Squarespace, and people said, no, they're quacks. We don't like them, whatever. And so Squarespace took their site down, and they were done. Like, they couldn't move it somewhere else because it's Squarespace's engine behind it. They had to back up and rebuild a site from scratch elsewhere, versus if you have WordPress on a host and the host says, we don't like you anymore, you can say, okay, and just move to a different host, and you're back up and running in 20 minutes,
But I think that's, I did not know that. And I think that is a very, not only interesting point, but an important point, because just like we're talking about with social media, people that used to use Vine, right? It went away. Blab went away. But I think that a lot of people are under the impression, if they're using these other web platforms, that they own it. Well, this is the first time, I was this many days old when I just learned this from Mickey Mellon. I had no idea. And so I'm even more happy that I use, WordPress for my website, because I don't think a lot of people know that, right? They're looking at probably ease of use, or whatever. And of course, there's pros and cons to that. So I think that's fascinating. I had no idea that was something that could happen, right? And that, I guess, and it is so important, right? It's like we also say, because you can tie it in with a landing page to your website. If you can get people's emails, you own the email addresses if
Exactly.
people opted in.
Yeah, that's the other piece you can own. Yeah, the problem with like this Squarespace and others is, it could be for political reasons they take you down, or it could be because they think you said something wrong and their algorithm got it wrong. And I've seen people get kicked off platforms a lot for nothing. They didn't do anything wrong. It's just the algorithm thought they did, and you can't really appeal with the big companies, or maybe they get hacked and you lose it that way, or they go out of business entirely. I'm sad about Google Stadia. I think I'm the only one that's sad about that, but things can disappear and you can be in big trouble. Whereas again, with WordPress or with other self-hosted options, WordPress isn't the only one. I can literally download it, put it on a flash drive, and hold it in my hands and put it wherever I want to put it. Whereas these other platforms, I mean, you better stay on the good side and hope that luck stays on your side. And odds are it will. I mean, most of us aren't doing anything bad, and the odds of them mistakenly canceling us, for what they thought was, something is low, but it's entirely possible. So
Yeah. Have you used Shopify at all or help people with Shopify?
Shopify is I see it in kind of the same boat. It's a fantastic product, and I think you'll be fine, but they own you. Like if they
Right.
decide you've done something wrong, or they think you did something wrong, or you can be in big trouble. And so we generally do WooCommerce, which again is
Okay.
hosted on your site. You own it. You have all the code. It's all yours. You still may need to move hosts at some point or move merchants, but you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. But it's tough because Shopify is affordable, and they seem like fantastic folks, and they do a great job, and it's a great product. But at the end of the day, they've got
Yeah,
you. So
you've got to pay that monthly fee, or you can end up losing your site.
right.
And I think this is a good point, right? This is especially with social media.
Mm-hmm.
What you say could end up having you get taken down, and it's unfortunate.
Right. We saw that. And I think the good example there is Trump with Twitter, where he relied so much on Twitter. Whether he should have been taken down or not, we don't need to go into. But he relied on Twitter to provide his audience, and he did nothing else to build it elsewhere. So when he went away, like you said, your email list is yours. If he had somehow been driving people to site, collecting emails, and building up his own infrastructure on the side, he could have used Twitter to facilitate that. Instead, he just used Twitter for everything. And when he got kicked off, right or wrong or whatever, he's done. He had nothing. He tried to start from scratch a few times with his own little thing, and it just didn't last. But if you can use social media to get people to your site, to get them onto email lists, and again, you own your site and you own your list, and so you can take those with you wherever you need to go. And then use Twitter, use Facebook to the extent possible to help facilitate that. But just know they could go away tomorrow for a variety of reasons. Like, who knows? Like, Twitter's a great example. Like, when Elon takes over, what's going to happen? I mean, no one really knows. It's going to be different for sure, but yeah.
I mean, I've actually seen some folks that are already like, hey, let's go connect on another platform because they're afraid that like Twitter's going to like go away in a couple weeks or something. But you just never know, right? I mean, you would think
I think it'll be fine, but
for $44 billion, it's not going to just go away.
Right, correct. There's that. But like, I have a friend on YouTube. He has a very innocuous YouTube channel. It's mostly talking heads of him talking about marketing. He got shut down for a while. YouTube said, sorry, you violated our terms of service. What did I do? He didn't do anything. Fortunately, in his case, he was able to get it restored. But a lot of times they say, sorry, our system reviewed it again and you're still at fault. So you're done forever. So and it can happen even if you don't do anything wrong, so.
Right.
It gets even tougher with things like YouTube, where there's not an easy way to roll your own. You sort of have to use theirs. So that's where at least keeping copies of your videos offline and that sort of thing is good.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a good point as well. Make sure you have someone who handles your website. So, because I think the other thing that I've seen happen, I don't talk about when you have a service like Shopify, but professionals, is where people forget that they have to, as an example, renew their domain name.
Yep.
And then someone steals it because they didn't pay for it and their site goes away. Now, and another thing I've seen happen, I don't know if what your guys' view is on this, Mickey, is that what I've seen happen too is, say for an example, I did your website, but I'm hosting it, I own it, and then I don't know, I get upset with you and I don't give you access to your website. I think that can be something people need to watch out for, because I believe that, like if you design my website for me, I would want to own it. Sure, you can maintain it, but you may decide at some point you want to part ways. And so really, I mean, what are your thoughts there? I mean, because I think that's something that you got to think about, as well as, do you own your domain name? Do you pay for your hosting? Because you may not necessarily want to be paying for these people's hosting.
Yeah. So I agree with you 100% on that. We manage like 175 websites and we host 0 of them. Like and clients get a little confused at first. Like, you're not going to host it for me. Like, no, we'll take care of all the dirty work, all the DNS and
Right.
FTP and all the acronyms, but you're going to pay the $20 a month to host it. So that way, if you ever get mad at us, you can just keep on rolling and have another company come help you. Because we've seen too many that come to say, hey, GreenMellen, we need your help. But my other marketing guy has my website. He hosts it. I can't reach him. He won't answer my emails or phone calls. And you're in a bad situation. So we have our clients, they own their domain name, they own their email, they own their hosting. Like, we take care of all the dirty work to the extent possible. But at the end of the day, we make it very easy to leave us, because that puts them in the best shape to do whatever's best for them. And if we treat them that way through everything, they tend not to leave us, but it's not because they're stuck in any way. So yeah, I agree with you completely. On the flip side, you did mention we wouldn't want to be paying for it. Frankly, I would. I'd rather pay for it and then upcharge it to clients like a lot of other companies do. That'd be great recurring revenue. And most of the companies I know that do that are good, reputable people that wouldn't hold things hostage. But I don't want to have that be a conversation. I don't want to have to convince someone, I promise we won't do anything bad. Like, no, I'm going to have you own it. You control it. Like there's nothing I could do to take it back. So
Right.
let's just make it very clear how this is going to be and put them in the best shape forward. So,
Yeah. And now, as we're updating our neglected websites these days, do you think that with some of the changes, do you think we should have video embedded? Should we, you and I both have podcasts. Should I have a podcast player in there? Should I, also maybe have, what are some of maybe the newer things, or is it really, I guess, does it depend?
I think it really depends. I think two things come to mind. One is that messaging, like what is the purpose of the site? What are you trying to do? And then two is to give things context. One thing that kind of drives me crazy is sites that they have a tab that's up for video, and on that page is like a whole slew of their videos. Like, what am I doing here? I don't know where to start. So like on my blog and on our site, I'll post videos from time to time, but it's with context. Like, hey, here's this thing I'm talking about. Here's why I'm talking about it. Here's a video that explains it. And then let's move on. So people understand why to click the video versus like, here's a whole bunch of my videos. Go check them out. Like it doesn't do much for me. But again, it comes back to what the purpose is and what you're trying to accomplish. Podcasts are the other thing. The thing I'm seeing there, a trend I really don't like, but I understand, is people getting rid of their their notes pages on their site. They say, hey, just listen to our podcast. We're not going to have the show notes really anywhere. They're kind of in Apple. You can find them there. It used to be people had beautifully manicured show notes. We still try to do that. And I love them as a blogger. Seth Godin's one in particular. He stopped doing show notes because he said no one's looking at them. I'm like, but Seth, I actually emailed him. He wrote back, which was kind of cool. But he said, I'm just not getting the traffic there to justify it. But I think he's also missing a step where I often link to other places in my blog. I blog every day and link off to a lot of resources that I find. Where do I link if I heard a great podcast of his? Do I just put them on Apple where some people get it? Like, I love to have that show note, the official show notes page to send people to say, hey, here's the notes from that show I was talking about. You can stream it there or then click off to wherever. And it's a tricky thing. But so again, it's very situational. It's all about what your goals are. But generally speaking, yes. I mean, embedding video, adding rich media to sites is generally a good thing to do, but depends entirely on what you're trying to accomplish. So.
Yeah, and I just shared too at the bottom there. If you guys want to connect with Mickey, he's definitely on LinkedIn, and also in the text or in the comments on the different platforms here. I've also shared the GreenMellen website as well as Mickey's website, mickmell.com. So make sure you guys are checking that out as well. And Catherine, see, Catherine is like, she's like your number one fan today, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
And most everything I post on LinkedIn, I write on my blog first. There's a concept called POSSE, P-O-S-S-E, publish once, syndicate everywhere else. I think it's something like that. But basically, like, you publish it on a place that you own and control, and then share it on LinkedIn, share it on Twitter, share it everywhere else. But that way, you still have it to control years later. And that's what most of my LinkedIn posts are I publish them on my blog and either link to them from LinkedIn or put a copy of them there or whatever. But having it on the site lets you be able to reference it way later. Using Seth as an example for the third time now. Just a few days ago, one of my posts, I referenced a post he wrote like 11 years ago because I thought it was still relevant today. If he'd shared that on Facebook or Twitter, like, I'm not finding a tweet from 11 years ago from someone, but it was easy just to go to the site and say, I know he wrote about this thing. Let me search real quick. Yep, there's his whole post about it, still just as it was. Let me share that with the world. And, it makes it easy to repurpose that stuff over and over. Different than how Catherine was suggesting we repurpose, which is also valuable. She said, repurpose those words, meaning, use it, multiple places with your video. I think you guys are pretty good at that on the show too, where you take snippets and can do lots of fun things with it.
Yeah. Repurposing is definitely important. In fact, one of the things too so this is now the second week in a row. We're actually broadcasting this to our LinkedIn company page, and so you can actually go live now to your company pages. You can also create company page newsletters. You need to get, from what I could tell, it's 150 followers on your company page, and it's about 160 where it'll give you the newsletter option on your company page. And I think where I see some of the benefits there, and actually POSSE might work as well with the newsletter. Like maybe you put that information on your website first, then you make that newsletter, and you could, at the bottom, you say this first appeared on our website at, blah, blah, blah.
Generally, I would say that's probably a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And because I've done that with a couple of my blog posts where like I put it on Medium or other stuff after I put it on my website first. But yeah, I think you know, what is your, have you tried the newsletters yet on LinkedIn, or have
I
you?
subscribe to a few, but I've not. So I need to. You made an interesting comment about Medium. I do publish on Medium all the time, and Medium is intended. They actually have a feature for exactly what we said. With you can have what's called a canonical link when you post something on Medium. You have to kind of go back in and edit to find it. But a canonical link is something that's hidden that only Google sees. But when they pull up your Medium article, it'll say in the code like, "Hey, this actually the main version of this is over on this other site." And so Google will see both of them, but Medium is saying, "Hey, the real one is on Mickey's site over here," and so that's the one that really gets more of the love in Google. And Medium has it as a feature they built in specifically for us to use like that. So I publish everything on Medium as well, just to get the benefit of that audience, but then have the canonical link so Google's not confused by why I'm publishing multiple places, which is kind of
Right,
cool.
because don't they punish you a little bit if you do that and don't like tell them?
Not
Or?
punish per se, but yeah, people talk about the duplicate content penalty, and it's not really a penalty, but it's they say, hey, we found 4 copies of the same thing. We're going to pick the winner and just nerf the rest. And so you want to make sure that they know that yours is the main one that's out there. So, and again, that's what that canonical link helps do. Google say, hey, there's 2 duplicate things. Like, oh, they're saying this is the real one. Cool. That's the one we'll keep, and we'll kind of buff down the Medium one a little bit.
Yes, and of course, right.
And Catherine, she's got me thinking about this a lot over the last few years. But that's where, again, I have like 1,000 posts on my blog, but the idea of writing a book sounds overwhelming. Like it's kind of a weird mix. And
I know a gal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the thing that got me with books for so long is that I see these long chapters, and I write simple posts. And again, I'll pull in Seth Godin for the 4th time now, but his latest book, The Practice, is like 180 pages long, and it's like 170 chapters. He basically took his blog posts about a topic and kind of cleaned them up and put them together. I'm like, okay, that seems reasonable. If I can find a topic where I've written 200 posts about something that kind of ties together, I can put those in order and kind of clean them up, and that becomes a book. So it feels a little more practical to do it that way. But yeah, she's right. Repurposing to write your book is the way to do it. And she's the queen of that for sure.
Yeah. And then we got a comment here. It will be interesting to see how blockchain breaks the control tech companies have, because it is coming. Yes.
Yeah, that'll be interesting for sure. And yeah, I don't know quite how blockchain is going to handle content directly per se, but it's going to, things are going to change, and it'll be
and even I wonder too, not to get too far off topic, like how, like, will your website have a link to send people to your metaverse stuff, like, because there's things like Spatial, which is a website, spatial.io, where people are meeting in the metaverse. So you put your link to your metaverse room on your website.
I would think so. I think for the next decade or so, the metaverse is going to be just social accounts basically in 3D places. It may merge into something bigger eventually, but none of the stuff we have now is what the metaverse is going to become. But if you have a profile on one of these that you want people to check out, a link to your site, I mean, hey, check out my Facebook, check out my Twitter, check out my Spaces, whatever.
That's right.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely check out Mickey's website. Connect with him on LinkedIn, and he's also on Twitter, folks. So another Twitter person, just like me.
There you go. Not as much as you. I need to get in there a little better, but I try to.
Yeah. Now next week we're actually going to have another person that I know locally, and you may know him. If not, you definitely want to get to know him. Justin Arndt, and he is a drone guy, and we're going to be talking about how you might have drones used in your business. That doesn't mean go out and buy your own drone, because he's going to tell us about some of the things you have to be aware of, because there's some people that putting themselves at risk with the FAA if they don't have a license when they're flying these things around, thinking,
well, I have a drone, and I put myself at risk in different ways because I don't fly it very well. So it's physical risk too. But the rules on that are crazy. And there's, having a good drone person can be huge. And that ties back into video on your website. And I mean, it all can kind of hook together pretty well.
Yeah. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Mickey. I'm glad we were able to catch up virtually, but we'll need to get in person, because we're actually not too far from each other physically right now. You're just probably about a 10-minute drive from where I'm broadcasting this from.
Nice.
So
very cool.
Thanks so much, and thank you everyone for being here today. Catherine, it was great to see you. Got to and also the Drunken Grape was here, and she wants us to invite her. Well, I mean, cool. You have to come to Atlanta. If
you want to drive out here for lunch with us, cool. Come on.
Yeah, just let us know when. That would definitely be fun. And so thanks, folks. We will see you next week on the Tim and Jim Show. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.